Well, hello and welcome to this latest video. In this video we're going to look at image maps or creating image maps in Linux. Now an image map is a clickable area on top of an image, and you can have multiple areas in the same image and they can be different shapes. There are three different shapes. You have the most common one, which is the rectangle, and it has the shape of rect. The next one is circle, and it has the shape of circle, and the final one is polygon, which has the shape name of poly. Now the one you'll probably use the most is rectangle, but polygon is very useful if you've got strange shapes that you want to be able to highlight within the image. The outer element of the image map is called map, and it must have a unique name because the image element needs to be able to call it. The inner element is called area, and this does not have a closing tag, whereas you can see map has a closing tag, area does not have a closing tag. Inside of area you have the attributes about the map, so the coordinates, the shape, this type of thing will all be inside the area element. Now the image map itself is controlled by an image element which is outside of the map element, and it will call it. Finally, you can actually nest shapes inside shapes. This is more of an advanced topic, and we'll probably do this in a different video. Right, let's have a look. I've created in Atom a new folder, HTML7b. Inside of that I've created another folder, images, and inside of that I've put in an image called squares, as you can see here. I've also created a template index.html file, and I've given it a title, images image map. Now the code which we will put in here is exactly the same for Linux and Windows and Mac, or all of any computer that's actually showing HTML. The difference is how you find the coordinates for the clickable areas within the image map. So as we're in Linux, we will have a look in Linux. If you come to the image that we want to display and right click on it, don't use open with image viewer because it doesn't show the coordinates. Come to open with, and you want the GNU image manipulation program called GIMP. Again, Pix does not show the coordinates. Now if GIMP isn't on your system, you can either install it with apt-get install GIMP, or you can come to the menu and click on Software Manager, and in the search bar in Software Manager type in GIMP, and you'll get a long list of various things. The one that you actually want is the top one, which you'll see is called GIMP, and you can see I've already installed it on mine. So we shall open it with GIMP. Now GIMP is a bit like Photoshop on steroids. It really is as good as Photoshop in my opinion, and you can do an awful lot with it. But don't be sort of worried too much about the interface, because all we want to know is we want to know the coordinates of various parts of the image. Now you can also use GIMP if you wish to resize the image, because the image must be the correct size before you start looking for coordinates, because if you resize it afterwards, the coordinates are going to be in a different place. So you need to have the image the correct size. Now this image in front of us is 320 by 320 pixels. If I wanted to resize it before looking at the coordinates, I would click on Image. I would then come down to Scale Image, and then in here I would actually put the new size, and then click on Scale, and it would scale it for me. The aspect ratio is controlled here. If you wish to keep the aspect ratio, keep the link clicked. If you want the aspect ratio not to be the same, so for example, if I put 160 in there, you'll see that the 320 doesn't change. If I put it back, click on that so the links are together, put 160 back in, you'll see the aspect ratio has changed. Now I don't want to actually make a change to the image. 320 is exactly what I want, and I want it in pixels, which is the px. This you don't have to worry about, it's just to do with the resolution of the screen, how many pixels fit in 1 inch, and this is how it's actually going to change the size of the image, how it's actually going to do the rendering. So if you wanted to do it, you'd click on Scale and it would go away and do it. I don't want to do it, so I'm going to click on Cancel. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to know where we are on the image, because it's the coordinates which are the most important part. So I would suggest you use the pencil tool. So come down to the toolbox on the left hand side, click on the pencil tool, and then where it says size, you can just bring it down to 1, and that will give you a very fine resolution on the screen to the exact point that you want to be. Right, I want this green square here, so I want to find the coordinates of the green square. Now it's quite important, because if you watch my cursor, you'll see that the horizontal is the first of the coordinates. The coordinates are down just at the bottom below here. So the horizontal is the first of the coordinates, and the vertical is the second of the coordinates. So always remember that you're using the x-axis first and the y-axis second. X-axis, y-axis. Right. Now I know that this point here is 0. It is, honest. But I want to know what this point is here, and as you can see, it's 110. So my first coordinate is 0 and 110. I now need to find this point here, and I know that that is going to be 100 by 210. There. So I now know the coordinates for the square here. Right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create an image element. We need to give it a source, and that will be images squares.png. We need to give it an alt just in case there's a problem, so we know what it is and the screen readers can actually read it out to those who need a screen readers. And we also need to tell it that it's actually going to use a particular image, a map, an image map. So we will type in the attribute use map, and we're going to call it squares. Now you'll notice that there's the hash sign, the pound sign at the beginning. That's telling it that the map is actually on this document. Right, so we need to close that off, and if I save that, we should see it appear in our browser. So that's part 1. We now need to create the map. So map, we need to give it a name, and that name must be the same as the use map name, but without the pound, the hash sign. We need to close the tag, and in here we will be able to put are different image maps. Right. So the first one we're going to create is area. Now there's no closing tag for area, if you remember, and we need to tell it what shape it's going to be. So the shape equals a rectangle. We then need to give it the coordinates, and if you remember, the first coordinate was 0, the second coordinate was 110, and then the bottom right hand side, or the right hand bottom side, should be 110 by 210. So we've now given it the coordinates. Next, we need to tell it that it needs to do something, it needs to go somewhere. So we put in an href, and in there we're just going to put in the hash, the pound sign, because we don't want it to actually do anything as such. Now, it's always a good idea to put in an alt, so we'll put in left, middle, square, and I'll just copy that, and we'll put in a title so that this will give the tooltip hint. Right, so let's just recap. We've got an element called area. Inside that, we've given it the shape style, which is a rectangle. We've got the coordinates for the rectangle. We've told it what's going to happen, where it's going to link to, which in this case is itself, the same page. We've given it an alt text in case there's a problem or there's a screen reader, and we've also given it a title so that we've got a tooltip. Now if I save that, you can see the blue dot has disappeared, and if I put my mouse over the image, you'll see it is still the normal arrow pointer until I move it into the square, and you can see the tooltip has popped up and it's changed into a clickable pointer. If I actually click on it, you'll see that there's just a faint outline border, and you can see that those are the coordinates that we chose here. So that's how you create a normal rectangular image map inside an image. Of course, if you want to go to a different page, you would put the page name here. So you might call it middle.html, for example. That doesn't actually exist. We only have index.html, but it does help if I can spell HTML. And we can, if we clicked on it, it would then go to that page. Now we'll get a 404 error because the page doesn't exist, and you can see here it is. But if it did exist, it would take us to that page. Right, let's have a look at a circle. So I've removed that. Now the circle is very similar in that we have the area, and inside that we have the shape, and this time it'll be circle, and we have the coordinates. Now for the coordinates we need the center point, the actual center point of the circle, and for this one we're going to find the center point here, and I can tell you that that's 160, 160, and then we need the radius, so from the center point to the outside edge, which I can tell you is 50. So 160 being horizontal, 160 being vertical, and 50 being the radius. So we've now got our coordinates. We want an href to tell it where we're going, and of course we're not going anywhere. We want an alt tag, an alt attribute, so we'll call it center square. I'm in Europe, so we use the European spelling for center, and we want a title which will be center square in a circle. If I now save that and we come back to our browser, again we have the normal pointer when we go round. We have the clickable square, but if we move to the center one, you can see it now says center square in a circle. If we go up to the top, we still have the clickable pointer. But because this is a circle, if we move it up here, notice the pointer is changing, and that's because we're actually in a circle. I've just clicked on it, and you might be able to just see the border here. And so while you're inside the border, you've got the clickable area, and as soon as you move outside, it's gone. Right, now the third type, of course, is the polygon. And the polygon, you can do any shape at all. It doesn't really matter what shape you want. You can do some very, very complex shapes indeed. I'm just going to do a triangle mainly because of time. And if we have a look at our GIMP image again, I'm going to actually do a triangle across here. So I need this coordinate here, this coordinate here, and that coordinate there. Now I know what these are, and because I've actually done this before, this is 220 by 230, 220 by 310, and this is 319 by 230. And if I click in here, I can put in my coordinates. So we have the correct coordinates. We need to have the link, which again is going to be just the hash. We need an alt tag, so I'm just going to write triangle in there, and we need a title which will be poly triangle, and I need to close my element. So we've given it the shape of poly, we have the coordinates, and you can have a long list. I mean, it can be a very complex shape. We have where it's going to go to when it's clicked, we've given it an alternative, and we have a tooltip title. I've saved that, and again, if I move my mouse around, as I move it into this square, you can see it changes, and if I click on it, you might just be able to see the triangle here. And it looks like I've given a wrong coordinates somewhere. I have, so let's just save that, click again, and yep, we can now see that we've got a proper triangle. I hope you found that useful. If you have, please like and subscribe. My name's John,